Week one's in the books. Fantasy football, it's in full force now. We've gotten a chance to see everyone play, and waiver wires. This is your first actual week of waiver wires since we've seen people play, because now there's hot names on the list. We'll get into that in a minute. What's crack-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo. Just in case you did not know so, go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. It's always much appreciated, much obliged. If you don't already, go ahead, follow me and many other football content creators on FTFN on YouTube and Twitch. We do live shows throughout the week, whether it's fantasy or just talking matchup previews and such. And yeah, let's get into this. It was a wild week one, but for the most part, my advice to you is believe the team you drafted in, stay the course, don't make any major adjustments. Don't freak out yet, unless, you know, you got some injuries, because, you know, we saw Blake Jarwin go down, and some other guys, even Kittle, I think. I don't know how long he's out for, though, or if he will be out under the severity of his injury off right now. But yeah, unless you have like big injuries, you don't need to make major moves, and that's kind of my advice to you. But you can make some minor moves on some guys, maybe, that can help you out in the future. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the quarterbacks, and let's start with the man, the myth, the legend, Mitch Trubisky, dude. I swear, the Detroit Lions are the only reason Mitch Trubisky has a job. He always looks good against him, but if you are in you shouldn't be in a sticky situation at quarterback. A lot of guys had pretty solid performances, but if you are, he's not a bad name to actually look at here on the waiver wire. He gets to face the Giants next week, who are 23rd after last night's performance against Big Ben, against opposing quarterbacks. On top of that, I mean, they are beat up at the corner position. So he might be an interesting name you want to look at if you're in trouble at quarterback. You really shouldn't be, though. And then I also have Kirk Cousins on here, who actually put up a solid effort against the Vikings against the Packers. He will face a defense, the Colts defense, next week, which a little bit more manageable after we saw what Gardner Minshew do to him. And I mean, the other guy you could probably throw on this list, Gardner Minshew, but that tight end defense was pretty tough last night. Granted, Drew Lock had a lot of misses, so Gardner Minshew, just a name maybe to put out there. But like I said, for the most part, you stay the course at quarterback. These are just some thoughts I'm throwing out there. But a guy you could maybe pick up for later, Baker Mayfield, because the guy had 85% of his passing yards were air yards. That led the whole league. Typically, that indicates eventually those will turn to big plays, big play performances, big game performances, especially in fantasy. Let's be honest, Odell, he had a few drops. He was very uncharacteristically not Odell. But yeah, I'm not saying start him, immediately start him this week. Because I believe he's got Cincinnati this week, which interesting matchup, because right now they're listed, they've allowed the second fewest points to opposing quarterbacks. But keep in mind, they faced a Tyrod Taylor and a very run heavy right now Charger team. So it's not a terrible matchup for Mayfield, but hopefully you have a better one. But I think he's a guy that I wouldn't mind stashing, or if you're in like super flex leagues, throwing in my flex position. And then Jimmy Garoppolo, he had actually a pretty good performance against the Cardinals. He had a few bad misses, like if we're talking about, real life. But fantasy, he produced decent enough, and he gets the Jets this week. So if you are in a tight bind and you need someone to pivot to, Garoppolo's got the matchup. Jimmy G doing his thing. Let's move to the running back position. And honestly, I think for me, the hottest running back on waivers here is probably going to be Benny Snell. dependent if James Conner, what his timetable is, but I think the hottest name for me is Nahim Hines. The dude, he saw 8 receptions, 8 what do you call those? Carries. I forgot what running backs actually do. 8 carries. And I mean, the dude was very, very solid, very efficient. And like, the thing is, he led the backfield in snaps. He was getting a volume of that backfield. Granted, this was before the Marlon, or this was really after the Marlon Mack injury. But he saw 54% of the snaps in the backfield. And the guy, the thing is, he was getting touches in the red zone. That's probably the biggest thing for me. He had 2 red zone targets. And then he also had 4, or was it 4? It was, yeah, 4 red zone carries, with 1 being inside the 5-yard line. So I know Jonathan Taylor's going to come in and he's gonna eat, but I think it's important to recognize, hey, if you're in deeper leagues, he could be a very good option. So let's move on to Benny Snell, because depending on the timetable for James Conner, then could be very, very, very interesting, because he put on a really, really, really good game last night. So I think it's definitely something to monitor, and definitely his stock is rising, and he should be a guy you go ahead and swoop up. If not, to kind of like for the immediate, for the right now. You know, if Conner can't play, then he's a guy you definitely could start week in and week out. Granted, got a tough matchup against Denver, but I mean, Derrick Henry did well, and I'm not comparing the two by any means, but the Steelers, they do like to run the ball, and they're pretty efficient at it. And I mean, Snell was too last night. And then we got Malcolm Brown, who actually looked better than Cam Akers in the Dallas game, which was a bit surprising, a bit crazy. But also, he led the backfield in snaps. He played 60% of the offensive snaps. He was the red zone back, but keep in mind, he did this at the beginning of week 1 last year. So take it with a grain of salt. If anything, he may be a guy to just kind of stash on your bench for now. Like I said, he did look like the better back, but I don't think he will be the back when it's all said and done. And then Devonte Freeman, for me, I know he's not on a team yet. He's met with 4 teams. He's just an interesting name maybe to pick up and kind of see where he goes. He could be put into a very good situation, especially once injuries start happening. So he's just a name definitely to watch out. And if you have an available spot on your roster, go ahead and stash him. On to the wide receivers. And I got a pair of Packers on here. Who would have thought? I got MVS and Allen Lazard. I think Allen Lazard would probably be the one I would go after, just because MVS is definitely the wide receiver 3 there. He's kind of the vertical, just the field stretching guy. He does have the big play potential, but Allen Lazard, he will see more snaps. Granted, that doesn't always convert into targets. But let's actually go real quick and take a look at how did they look on the target end. Because, I mean, Devontae Adams he was eating. He had 17 targets. And actually, MVS, he had 6 targets to Allen Lazard's 4. Granted, Allen Lazard, he actually caught all 4 balls, with the longest being a 38-yarder. But he did see the field more, though, Allen Lazard. So I'd be interested if either is available in your leagues. I think they're worth a pickup if you need help at the wide receiver position. So just something to keep in mind. I think Paris Campbell, especially in PPR leagues, is a hot name. He saw what? Oh, I think it was like I think actually it was higher than 60. 83%. He saw 83% of the Colts' offensive snaps. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, Phillip Rivers targeted him heavily. And like I said, if you're in a PPR league, then you want to look for those guys that are just target hogs. He's probably gonna be similar to like maybe a Randall Cobb. There we go. Wow, Randall Cobb or a Cole Beasley, I mean, even a Jamison Crowder, where they might not. I know James Crowder kind of popped off this week, but typically he's not a big play threat. He's just like I said, a target hound. But yeah, Phillip Rivers loves focusing in his slot. He led with all targets. Well, he was tied with T.Y. Hilton at 9 though, so a very, very, very sexy number. So Paris Campbell, I think, is an interesting name. Anthony Miller, he got a lot of his work in the slot this week with Mitch looking good. He did actually lead in all targets. And what is his matchup this week? It's actually a good one. The Giants, that's right. So yeah, it was Logan Ryan. Okay, so might actually be a tougher matchup for him, but still a guy that was highly targeted. So if you got a place to stash him on your bench, do so. Sami Watkins I only have up here because honestly, straight up, if he produces again in week 2, he's a prime trade away target. Like, they're facing Los Angeles, the Chargers, which I know is typically a good secondary, but this is the Chiefs we're talking about. If you pick up Watkins, he has another banger of a game, then oh my gosh, trade the heck out of him. He is prime. Like, that is like probably the peak of Watkins, because the guy he does commit these disappearing acts. Did it all last year. Granted, he's kind of coming off a very strong run from the playoffs last season to the beginning of this year. I mean, even the Super Bowl, where he's put out bangers, but just given his history, he'll typically disappear. So I'd say pick him up if he has a really good game. Then bam, go ahead, trade him and try to shore up somewhere your weekend. All right, let's go to the tight ends. Dallas Goddard, I think, is the most obvious one here. He led the Eagles in targets, and like everything going on with Zach Ertz's contract, everyone's getting paid around him except him. I mean, yeah, he had 9 targets to Zach Ertz 7, and he was actually way more productive than Zach Ertz, is the thing, which is kind of wild. But I mean, if you're not gonna pay Zach Ertz, he might be a prime trade away candidate. And I mean, Dallas Goddard's available in 20. Currently, as I'm doing this, I'm sure it's changed by the morning time. 27.2% of leagues. So, and this is ESPN leagues. So I'm saying, man, it'd be nice to get you a solid tight end. Those are hard to come by. A guy that may produce actually played in the same game. Logan Thomas, man, he kind of came out of nowhere, and he led all Redskins, the football team receivers, in targets with 8. That was one more than Scary Terry. Dwayne Haskins, he seems like a guy that would probably favor going to his tight end, his safety blanket, more than other quarterbacks may. So he's owned in less than 1% of leagues. He's probably going to be a very hot name on the waiver wire. And then we also have OJ Howard, who, surprise, the guy got he got more targets than our boy Gronk. Like, yeah, Gronk was only targeted 3 times opposed to the 6 Howard was. And I think Gronk is like, they could definitely utilize both tight ends very successfully. He will have a decent matchup. The Panthers, who, I mean, Waller did actually pretty well. He saw a lot of targets. And I mean, from the tight end position, it's like, it's so tough to find a quality tight end, a solid tight end. I mean, Waller had 8 targets. He went 6 for 45. That's all you can really ask for. You want consistency at the tight end position. And I think OJ Howard is kind of in a very good spot. Or did I say OJ Howard? Yeah, OJ Howard. Good. And then Jonnu Smith, who actually had a really good game last night for the Tennessee Titans against the Denver Broncos. He was actually used quite a bit in the red zone. Then again, they did use like a few times 3 tight end sets. So, and those red zone targets might not be as much as you think. Just with other guys competing for it, it's like just ticks you off, man. Let me tell you. Let's see here. He is, as of now, only owned in 22.1% of leagues. I mean, he was solid last night. 7 targets. He ended up coming away with a touchdown. It was nice to see him targeted in general, like, because that was the thing last year with him, dude. He was very up and down with his performances. You couldn't really trust him because it seemed like him and Tannehill, they weren't on the same wavelength sometimes and some nights. But he was like, I mean, so you had the AJ Brown and Corey Davis. They led the way with 8 targets, and then 7 you had Humphreys and Smith. So the tight end in the slot. Will they be in that position, that predicament every game? Because I mean, Tannehill threw 43 times last night. I don't know, but I mean, they could be, I guess. But you gotta keep in mind, this is a run first, run down their throat type of team, and they face the Jags next week, so that will be interesting. Doyle didn't exactly do great against the Jags, like not stunning, but and then again, there weren't like big tight end performances this past week. But I know it's a tough position just to get right. Like, a lot of people, sometimes they just end up streaming tight ends throughout the year. But maybe, like, especially Dallas Goddard, I think is a guy you could probably start for the rest of the year. And I think he's in a good situation where Zach Ertz might not be on the team by the end of the season. He might not get that big contract. They've paid everyone around him but him, and the Eagles don't have a lot of money. So keep that in mind. But that's it for the video. Go ahead, do that YouTube thing. It's always much appreciated, much obliged. And as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.